Welcome to the SATLUJ News Hour. This is Ginger Jeffries coming to you from the Phoenix desk, bringing you the top stories from across the globe. Here are today's headlines. Israel releases settlers that were arrested after anti-Palestinian attacks. Pakistan's $700 million loan from China intensifies fears over the debt burden. Visa and Mastercard cause crypto push in wake of industry meltdown. Topping our news today, Israeli authorities have released all suspects that were arrested after a rampage by Jewish settlers in the occupied West Bank. One Palestinian was killed, hundreds injured, and Palestinian homes and property were destroyed. The Israeli police said that 6 suspects have now been released and that 2 more are on house arrest. The Israeli government has come under fierce criticism for its response to the attacks across several villages near Nablus. Settlers are accused of committing shootings and arson attacks and beating Palestinians with metal rods and rocks. Some 390 Palestinians were injured. The majority were from tear gas and smoke inhalation. The Palestinian authorities said that at least 30 Palestinian homes and more than 100 cars were burned. Every year, hundreds of attacks have been carried out by Israelis living in illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank. So far this year, at least 4 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank. It's all about the money as China has agreed to loan Pakistan $700 million. The reason? To help the country's worst economic crisis in a generation. This comes as Western countries now have increased concerns about cash-strapped Islamabad's debt burden to Beijing. The loan is on top of $30 billion that Pakistan already owes to China and Chinese commercial banks. Securing the financing will help to unlock bailout cash from the International Monetary Fund. News of the loan is just 1 day after Pakistan's National Assembly unanimously passed a bill to increase tax revenues. The IMF said Pakistan must comply with certain requirements such as raising taxes and securing external funding before the release of $1 billion in bailout funds. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Kazakhstan to meet his counterparts from all 5 former Soviet republics. During his first stop on the Central Asia trip, Blinken sat down for talks with Kazakhstan's former Prime Minister Mukhtar Talyuberi. The U.S. pledged support of the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of the country. Blinken's trip came just days after the anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. U.S. officials have said the Biden administration is seeking to step up engagement with the region, especially for countries facing economic fallout from the conflict. Blinken is set to also visit Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. Blinken added the U.S. had increased an initiative to expand regional trade routes and export markets in that region to $50 million during the meetings. Big changes are happening as early results of Nigeria's presidential and parliamentary elections have put the ruling party's candidate well ahead. The votes are coming in, and analysts say that this election could be a crucial turning point for Nigeria after several years of worsening insecurity and acute economic troubles. Many believe progress in tackling the country's multiple problems are key to stability across much of Africa. 18 candidates hope to replace the outgoing 2-term president Muhammadu Buhari, but only 3 are considered to have a credible chance of winning: Bola Tinubu, Atiku Abubakar, and crowd favorite Peter Obi. Obi and Tinubu are neck and neck as provincial results from the Lagos State Collection Center released a narrow win for Obi. Tinubu did appear to have won at least 2 other states with some ease. The Obi has done well in his power base in the Southeast. Obi has made massive gains that would allow him to build the political organization necessary in case of a victory. Coming up next, Supreme Court to hear challenges to Biden's student debt relief plan. Stay with us. We'll be right back after the break.
Go where no one has gone before. Between the sounds of bombs and the whisperings, echoes of truth. Confronting power with courage and lighting the darkest shadows to inform and inspire. Flowing with truth and charting our own path. SATLUJ Network. Let the truth flow.
Welcome back. This is the SATLUJ Network from the Phoenix desk. The U.S. Supreme Court hears arguments today over President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan. The plaintiffs say the president exceeded his authority by granting debt relief. The defense says his actions are covered by the 2003 HEROES Act. Hundreds of demonstrators gathered outside the Supreme Court, some holding signs saying, "Cancel student debt." Other with signs saying the action is illegal. The plan would eliminate up to $20,000 in debt for people who qualify, triggering a $400 billion shortfall in the budget. 6 states brought legal challenges against the plan. All were heard in lower courts before the issue made its way to the top court of the land. The son of a Mexican drug lord is accused of following in his father's footsteps. Officials have now requested Ovidio Guzman, son of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, be extradited to the United States from Mexico. Ovidio was captured last month. The American government says he has been in charge of a dozen methamphetamine labs in Sinaloa and conspired to distribute cocaine and marijuana. This as his father is serving a life sentence in the U.S. for trafficking hundreds of tons of drugs into the country over the course of 25 years. Ovidio was briefly captured once before in 2019, but managed to escape after his cartel waged an all-out war in response. His legal team is fighting the extradition request. A corruption scandal associated with the 2020 Olympics results with indictments over unfair competition rules. But the playing field doesn't include athletes. This one involves the advertisers. Japan's biggest advertising agency and 5 other companies are now accused of violating an anti-monopoly law. Court documents say the firms and executives colluded to restrict each other's business activity with regard to the awarding of contracts, adding their actions went against public interest and effectively restricted competition. According to local media, the president of the Dentsu Group, which is the biggest player in this game, told prosecutors that his firm is liable. Products sold by the companies involved include a suit retailer, a publishing firm, and a merchandise company licensed to sell plush toys. U.S. payment giants Visa and Mastercard put a pause on the transaction with the crypto industry. This after a massive reversal by the industry last year. Bankruptcies for crypto key players FTX and BlockFi rattled investors and increased scrutiny from regulators in the industry. Visa, the world's largest payment processor, severed an agreement with FTX for a crypto-backed credit card. Mastercard also pushing back their launch of a similar card. Industry reps say the recent high-profile failures in the crypto sector are an important reminder that we have a long way to go before crypto becomes a part of mainstream payments and financial services. Coming up next, Afghan women fight for their rights. Stay with us. We're back after the break. Welcome back. This is the SATLUJ Network from the Phoenix desk. In America, March has been declared Women's History Month. It's a time to highlight the contribution of women in history along with contemporary society. On the eve of this national celebration, we wanted to turn the attention to a global level and introduce you to a group of women who are demonstrating extraordinary bravery in the midst of unimaginable circumstances. In this special report, Gina Vigil tells the story of the women of Afghanistan.
There is a people group who have faced oppression, discrimination, and violence on every continent throughout every generation. This group is women. This is especially true for the women of Afghanistan who are right now fighting for not just their rights, but their lives. This was not always the case. In 2001, after the U.S. became involved in the war with Al-Qaeda, women for the first time saw their rights being advanced and protected. They ran for public office, pursued higher education, becoming doctors and lawyers. But they have seen it all stripped away, again, when the Taliban gained control in August 2021 after the sudden withdrawal of U.S. troops and the dropped support from allied countries that followed. Now, they can't pursue higher education, made official in December 2022. How many countries in the world bar girls and women from receiving an education? The answer is none. They are restricted to their homes because they cannot leave their house without a male guardian. They cannot be involved in government leadership. They cannot speak freely and protest against their government, and if they do, they can be jailed and beaten for not adhering to the strongly enforced Islamic law, or Sharia. Many stories have come to light that have shown the brutality of the Taliban's inhumane treatment and should be shared, not for their shock, but to highlight the bravery of the ones who have come face to face with the fight for freedom. Shortly after the Taliban took control in 2021, Tamana Parayani, 25-year-old human rights activist, was arrested in the middle of the night along with her 3 sisters. While imprisoned, they were brutally tortured and abused up until her social media video capturing her arrest and imprisonment garnered the attention of aid and human rights groups. And what was her crime? She, along with others, protested the Taliban's abuse and draconian restrictions on the women of Afghanistan. She continues to take a stand to this day. But women in Afghanistan do not wish to be completely defined by their struggle, but want to show how we can all rise above untold challenges and go as far as we can. Rangina Hamidi, former first woman minister of education in Afghanistan, is a perfect example of this resilience.
Now, I've personally dedicated my career life, my adult career life from 2003 onwards until August 15, 2021, to Afghanistan, to Afghanistan's women and children. As a daughter of Afghanistan, I did what I could in my capacity.
And not all people living in Afghanistan are doing so out of fear, as the public often is led to believe. Many stay because they love their country and the life they've built, even in the face of danger. Real change does not always occur with big demonstrations of resistance.
The slow, quiet, persistent, wise women who are continuing to fight daily to make the future, to make tomorrow better for their daughters, even if it's quietly. Those are the efforts that I am emphasizing on, and those are the efforts that I am personally supporting and committing to.
But real change is with the ones who stay and consistently work towards creating a better life for their families.
I know that those persistent actions and continuous wise actions will change the future, not these sporadic, high volume, high attention seeking stories. They've never historically ever been the actual sustained change makers in the past, and they won't be in the future either.
And there's another group often overlooked because of the extreme restrictions on the women, but they too can suffer sometimes even more than the women.
While I like and support the focus and the attention we have given as a world to women's issues in Afghanistan, I also want to remind us that the men don't have it any easy either. Let's be fair. Let's be kind to the struggles that men in Afghanistan face on a daily basis as well, sometimes probably even more than women, because women right now can just cover themselves in a burqa or cover themselves behind the wall in a house. The man, most of the time, doesn't have that choice because he is out in the public and he cannot cover himself from the reality of what he has to face every day.
One of these men who have bravely spoken out against the treatment of Afghan women is Professor Ismail Mashal, who ran a private university in Kabul. He has publicly vocalized his disdain for the restrictions on education for girls and women.
ولی متاسفانه بگوییم تا امروزه یکی از مقامات رهبری طالبان به سطح رهبری طالب بلند نشدن که یک دلیل شرعی منطقی برای 20 میلیون دختر افغان بگوین که روی اینی دلایل مکتب یا پنتون برایتان بسته است.
He has daughters himself and he wants to see their full rights restored. He has closed his school permanently until the law allows women to attend again. Would the women of Afghanistan have been thrown back into the past, resetting the equal rights of women, if the U.S. had not abruptly pulled out all troops and NATO not have backed out? Many Afghan people stood behind the cause of freedom alongside NATO, who pledged their commitment to fight for Afghan women's rights. Because they risked their lives, they question why they have forgotten the cause in which they championed for many years.
I had invested 20 years of my life. My father had sacrificed his head in this cause that we truly believed in trying to fix Afghanistan, trying to serve Afghanistan, trying to create a different future. The shock of the international community quietly sitting as a country fell back into the hands of Taliban, I think that shock kept me there, and I didn't want to give up. I waited for a week to see what the situation would become, and then just witnessing the chaotic evacuation and the attack on the evacuees and just the level of desperation that I witnessed of my own countrymen and women, it shattered me. It broke me, and I said, how can we as a global community in the 21st century allow such a thing to happen? And yet it happened.
There's some hope on the horizon despite Taliban rule. Not all Taliban members and sympathizers agree with the strict laws in place and are now reconsidering lifting some restrictions. Although faced with these challenges, Rangina leaves us with a reminder, quote, "I believe in the power of my people and my country. They'll find a way out whether the world stands with them or not. The question is, will people seek to understand? And will the international community once again come alongside them or continue to sit this one out?" This is Gina Vigil bringing you the SATLUJ News Spotlight.
And those were the top stories for today. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the SATLUJ Network, the news network that lets truth flow. For more information and the full story coverage, head on over to our website at satlujnetwork.com. And of course, we'd love to hear your feedback at info@satlujtv.com. We'll see you next time.